Meeting together on January 30 of 2023 in the headquarters of the BBVA Foundation in Madrid, Spain, in order to deliberate and decide, the jury has resolved to grant the BBVA Foundation Frontiers of Knowledge Award in the Ecology and Conservation Biology category in its 15th edition to Professor Susan Alberts of Duke University, Professor Gene Altman of Princeton University, and Professor Marlene Zuck from the University of Minnesota. We recognize these three scientists for their outstanding contributions to the behavioral and evolutionary ecology of animals. Behavior is the primary means by which individuals respond and adapt to ever-changing conditions, including shifts in their social environments. These three scientists have extended our understanding of the evolutionary and functional significance of behavior in driving animal survival, reproduction, and fitness. Their work has clarified the function, causation, development, and evolution of individual behaviors within wild populations. Additionally, Alberts, Altman, and Zuck are recognized for elucidating the distinct roles of females in the evolution of social animals. Gene Altman and Susan Alberts are together recognized for their outstanding contributions to our understanding of the function and evolution of social behavior, with a particular emphasis on primates. Their names are inseparable from the Amboseli Baboon Project in Kenya, one of the longest-running field projects in animal behavior that began in 1971. Observations collected over 5 decades have followed over 2,000 individual baboons across several generations. Over time, this study has expanded beyond social behavior, integrating field observations with analysis of endocrine and genetic data, and demonstrating the power of studying sociality, fertility, and mortality across the full life course of these wild animals. Their longitudinal intergenerational study of baboons has demonstrated that those baboons with powerful fathers and socially well-connected mothers have the highest lifetime reproductive success. Marlene Zuck's research explores the role of behavioral interactions in animal evolution. Her work addresses how interactions between males and females, or between parasites and their host, explain sexual selection and mate choice. This leads to diversification of species over time. Zuck's work provides new insights into the ornamentation and behaviors of male animals that Charles Darwin was unable to fully explain. She showed that the elaborate tales of male birds and the songs of male crickets provide honest signals of fitness to potential mates. Her work has demonstrated that females choose healthier, more ornamented males, and has established that parasites and disease are pervasive in shaping animal behavior, ecology, and evolution. We recognize Alberts, Altman, and Zuck for their independent and collective efforts in advancing the fields of behavioral and evolutionary ecology. Each scientist has spent countless hours in the field observing individual animals and the dynamic social and ecological environments in which they live. They've developed cutting-edge techniques to connect these behavioral observations with measures of individual health and stress. They have demonstrated that social interactions have measurable consequences for individual animals within their lifetimes and for the evolution of species over time. This is fundamental to explaining how complex societies evolve. Taken together, the work of Alberts, Altman, and Zuck not only contributes to our conceptual understanding of animal behavior, including human behavior, but also enriches our understanding of the need to incorporate social interactions into conservation plans for animal species.
What has your research on baboons revealed about the importance of social behavior in our understanding of animal survival, reproduction, and fitness?
Right. So the work that we've been doing, and actually that a number of other people have been doing, has helped us understand that the social environment is just as important as the physical environment for determining health and survival for our study species and many other organisms that are highly social creatures. What this means is that animals effectively are using social behavior to solve the problems in their environment. And the diversity of ways in which they do this has taught us not only about the many different solutions to the problems of the environment that have evolved over the millennia, but it's also given us insight into our own species, since we solve some of those problems the same ways that the baboons do. I think it's also taught us, very importantly, that this feature of our species, this dependence on the social environment, because it's also true of humans, that the social environment is a determinant of health and survival, that this feature is something that has very deep evolutionary roots.
The jury has highlighted your use of cutting-edge techniques to study animals in the wild. Could you explain the innovative methods you have employed in your research on baboons and how they have contributed to elucidate their behavior?
Sure. One of the funnest things about our research from my perspective is that we've always been very motivated to use the most recent cutting edge techniques that we can get our hands on to gain leverage into the questions that we have, that we want to ask about how these animals survive in this very challenging environment. So for several decades now, for instance, we've been collecting fecal samples from known individuals as they deposit those samples throughout the day in their regular lives. We now have freezers full of thousands of these samples from which we can extract DNA, we can extract microbiota, we can extract hormone metabolites, and all of these compounds give us insight into what's happening under the skin as the animals face the challenges that they have to encounter and solve every day. More recently, my colleague Jenny Tung has been using a very interesting and innovative technique for asking about how animals respond to immune challenges almost in real time. She uses a technique where by drawing a very small sample of blood from the animal, she can then challenge that blood in vitro with an immune challenge and see how variation among animals in how they respond to that immune challenge maps onto their social environments. Most recently, my colleague Beth Archie has been implanting tiny paperclip-sized heart rate monitors into baboons to try to understand how heart rate varies with the social environment.
What can your research on baboons teach us about how to confront the global challenge of biodiversity conservation?
Yeah, this is such an enormous challenge. And the challenges that our study system in particular face are first, habitat loss and habitat degradation. And secondly, environmental change as a result of global climate change. So for instance, at the moment, what's happening is a terrible drought in Amboseli, one of the worst droughts in the past 50 or 60 years. And it's a result of both changes in how humans use the landscape and also global climate change, an increase in the probability of droughts in that particular type of habitat. And by carefully documenting and studying how baboons can accommodate and adapt to, or fail to adapt to, various degrees of habitat change, we can gain insight into how many different types of species are likely to respond in the face of such challenges and change.
What has been the most important contributions of the Amboseli Baboon Project to understanding the behavioral and evolutionary ecology of animals?
So the contributions have come from understanding the relationships between the two sexes and within each sex. We've been able to show how these relationships start to develop from birth and continue to have impacts throughout the animal's long lives.
What has your research revealed about the distinct role of females in the evolution of social animals?
The females were not considered to be important by the early observers, and the males in baboon societies are much larger than the females and much more involved in aggression, and that influenced what people thought and what they watched. But we were able to show that the female's social structure and the female's relationships with both males and other females were extremely important and important throughout the females' lives.
Why is it important to ensure that conservation of baboons, and what steps should be taken to achieve this goal?
So it's important to have the baboons persist in the world because they live lives and experience environmental change very much as humans do. And this gives us a model for adaptations to changing environments.
What have been the fundamental contributions of your research to understanding the role of behavioral interactions in animal evolution?
I'm interested in how parasites in particular can help shape the way animals behave, and especially how parasites can change the way that animals choose their mates. It means that animals are not just interacting with each other or with members of the opposite sex, but they're also affected by parasites and pathogens that change the traits that females might find most attractive in a mate.
Can you provide an example of how social interactions can lead to the diversification of species over time?
People always think that, females prefer the same kind of male, but in fact, often females prefer very different types of males. And if different kinds of females prefer different kinds of males, eventually that's going to end up with populations that have slightly different characteristics, and that can result in different species being propagated. It means that everything isn't always acting the same way, and that kind of variation is essential for the way that animals evolve.
How can your research help us to improve the conservation of threatened animal species and prevent the loss of biodiversity?
We can't conserve something if we don't know whether it's there to begin with. I think a lot of people think that what we want to conserve are big so-called charismatic megafauna, the elephants and the pandas. But I'm just as concerned about preserving the little things, the small animals that really can matter, the pollinators, the scavengers, the animals that are hidden away in the grass. And if we don't understand what they're doing and we don't understand their biology, we're never going to be able to save them.